So I recently had the chance to play a preview build of the Order 1886, and I'm here to tell you that unfortunately, while not definite, all the fears you had about the Order 1886 may actually come true. And this is kind of disappointing in some ways, but it's not official. From the demo I played, it was about a half an hour, I'd say. And all those fears of quick time events and incredibly long story periods that had you walk from A to B without doing anything all happen in this preview. The initial trailer was incredibly exciting. You had this thought of werewolves and monsters and fantasy elements added to an incredibly beautiful looking Victorian London, and that incredibly beautiful Victorian London is still there, but we haven't seen the supernatural parts to it yet. The demo, there were a few enemies, and they were all human. There was nothing special about it. The gunplay though, it's impactful but not terribly exciting. So you start off the demo abseiling down an airship, which looks incredible, but you don't really have a lot of control over it. They tell you to push forward on the stick and he moves forward, but you don't really have control. It's like an interactive cutscene. Then they ask you to abseil, and you press X and then he jumps, and you press X again and then he jumps. Once you go inside the airship, there's a bunch of walking around, followed by a forced stealth sequence, which, if you get caught, it's an insta-fail. So I felt like this preview was a real how not to preview your game piece, because it featured everything people hate about games, from the forced stealth sequence to insta-failing to a fair number of quick time events to a lot of just corridor walking, not even shooting. So yeah, it was a little disappointing. I'm still optimistic for the game though, simply because I have to just tell myself the developers Ready at Dawn and Sony are hiding something. There's some little twist, something that's going to change everything once you get into it, once they reveal it. Similar to maybe the first person reveal of GTA, this big hey, we kept this secret, because what I remember from the Order 1886 when it was first announced was this really dark supernatural supernatural monsters, and the primary weapons that you use, from the shotguns to the rifles, feel incredible. They really have a real punch to them. You can see it in the character, you can see it in how the enemies react. But then I had this sort of SMG or automatic pistol, and I was shooting it, and it just literally felt like I was hitting them with those little spongy Nerf bullets, because it was going into them, but they weren't reacting. So I don't know how they'd fix that, really, to be honest with you. But the primary weapons feel really great. They're not much different than what you'd expect in games. There's a little, I guess, Victorian twist to it. I think they have some interesting place to go, because it's incredibly impactful that every bullet and every kill kind of you notice it more. Like so many times in games, there's so many big set pieces that you're just shooting at anything that moves, and once it stops moving, you move on to the next thing. But with this, there's this extra split second of thought to the enemies that you kill. I don't know if that's just myself, but it really does come down to the visuals as well, which, that's the one thing you can't knock it for. It just looks incredible. From the detail of the hair, which, Square Enix with a Pinnacle at one point, but the facial hair, I know it sounds silly, but the facial hair looks brilliant. There's an incredible amount of detail, everything, visually, the presentation is spectacular. It's possibly the best looking game on consoles ever, but I don't think visuals is going to be enough to get people really excited about this game. And so far the gameplay they've shown hasn't been the best way to highlight it, I suppose. I just hope if they're hiding something, they show us soon enough, because what they have shown since its announcement hasn't been enough to make it an exciting purchase. And it's out in February. That's 2 months away. So when you think of that, it's right to be worried in some sense, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be a terribly bad game. It's just there's too much to break up what is fun about it, which, I mean, with the detail, they can really make for a shooter that actually each encounter, whether it's 5 enemies or 20, really matters, because there's so many games. Like, the biggest comparison with The Order is Gears of War. When you consider any encounter in Gears of War, you're killing 20, 30, 40, 50 enemies, and it doesn't matter, like, you just keep going. But with this, like, there was one of the only shooting encounters was in this sort of kitchen area, and you're shooting enemies, but there's pots in the way, and it's those little touches that make it sort of feel a bit different. But following that, then you're walking around again for ages, and there's another stealth sequence, and it just breaks everything up. And I just hope that this chapter is not fully representative of what the game is in terms of its ratio of moving to quick time events to action, because then you're gonna get pretty bored. Now I played through the demo 2.5 times, and while the shooting is good, I keep going back to it. It's just that breakup of play. It's constant those quick time events. Nearly every walking section ends in a quick time event. The mini games are quick time events. There's too much quick time events. It's as simple as that, which have never been fun, really. And when they've been used sparingly, I suppose. But yeah, The Order 1886, I wouldn't write it off right now. I wouldn't say it's a bad game. I wouldn't say it's not fun. But they need to no longer have any cards up their sleeves if they have it, which I keep thinking they do. And I think that's the only reason why I'm really optimistic about it, because if what I played is the full game, like, the setting is like possibly its biggest strength, and I didn't feel any different to anywhere else. You're on an airship, but it doesn't feel like an airship. It just feels like a rich, like, higher upper class area. Like, it didn't feel so much of an airship unless you got to the airshipy parts. Like, the interior just felt like any building it could have been. And I just hope these supernatural elements have a much bigger, monsters, whatever you want to call them, have a much bigger part to the game than what they've shown. But yeah, so just say before I go, this footage is B-roll. I wasn't allowed capture anything, so this is pretty much the same demo though. But yeah, that's about it for now. So The Order 1886 comes out on February 20th on PlayStation 4. If you want to know more of my thoughts of the game, you can check them out on gamesmack.net. And that's it for now.